In this video, I am joined by family of the channel, family of OG55, Mr. Matthew Muir, all the way from the UK. We're talking about, can Disney fans be too purist? Will Iger's plan ultimately work? And much, much more on this episode of OG55. Matthew Muir is in the house to join us. Let's go. Welcome aboard to another episode of OG55. I am joined by a friend of the channel, Mr. Matthew Muir. Matthew, how you doing today, man?
Very good, thank you.
It's always a pleasure having you on, and we're gonna have you on again very, very soon. Actually, we already have that planned. Again, just want to say, like, from everybody from the OG55 family, want to thank you, Matthew, for all your support over the years. You're amazing, brother. So, I will be linking down in the description box his Twitter. So check out Matthew on Twitter. And then also, Matthew, do you mind if I link your Instagram as well?
Absolutely.
Perfect. So Twitter and Instagram down in the show notes below. Follow this man. Very, very passionate Disney fan. You guys will love his insight on everything Disney. He gets real into like the corporate side of things, fascinating stuff. So check out Matthew on Twitter, Instagram, in this show notes down below. Okay, so Matthew, now you actually when we decided to do this video, I said, hey, you know what, Matthew, go ahead and pick the topics, right? So you picked 3 topics, which actually I think are really, really good. The first one I want to talk to you about is, can Disney fans be too purist? Okay, can they be too stuck in that purist vision of what they believe Disney should be? So I'll start with you, and then I'll follow after you. Matthew, what do you think? Can Disney fans be too purist?
I believe in some cases they can. Like they believe that Disney should have just stayed under the leadership of the Disney bloodline for the rest of its existence, or maybe even just gone out of business once Roy died in 1971. Some fans are also a little more generous, and they believe that Disney should have gone out of business once Eisner left, and that every single decision Iger has made since 2005 has been bad, even the acquisition of Pixar.
You know, that's ridiculous, man. Like, and that's the thing. I'm old enough to remember the Eisner years, and a lot of fans hated Michael Eisner. They hated him. They thought the same thing about Michael Eisner. He was the worst thing that ever happened to the Walt Disney Company. This whole thing, 2005, if people out there are old enough to remember 2005, 2006, it was just as bad for Michael Eisner back then, maybe even worse, to be honest with you. So this stuff, I agree with you, Mike. Matthew, I do believe that Disney fans can be too purist. Walt Disney was he was a forward thinker, right? So everything was like next thing. The last thing Walt Disney would have wanted, in my humble opinion, not to speak for the man, he's been passed away for a long time, but in my humble opinion, knowing what we know about Walt Disney, he would have kept trucking forward, and this whole idea that like, well, Marvel isn't Disney and Star Wars isn't Disney and all this stuff. Why not? Why can't superheroes be part of the Disney umbrella? Why not? It's like, to me, it's sort of the same thing as like the more masculine version of like princesses or what have you. You have princesses, superheroes, cowboys. To me, it fits perfectly, and look, people say, well, Disney never got into that kind of stuff before. Yeah, Disney never got into theme parks before until they did. Disney never got into live action movies before until they did. That's the point of Disney, was it's this ever expanding circle under Walt Disney. It started as a small little cartoon studio, the Disney Brothers Studios, and it grew and grew into animated features, live action, theme parks, a city of tomorrow with Epcot. This stuff, Walt constantly grew what it meant to be Disney. So this whole idea of like, we're going to introduce something new into Disney and that's so anti-Disney is kind of, in my opinion, BS. Disney's always been about growing and expanding what it means to be Disney. So I think fans get too stuck in the Walt era, right? A lot of fans get stuck in this Walt era where it's like, well, Walt didn't do that, so we shouldn't do that. The man died decades ago. You know, I mean, we have to move on, and we have to sort of take the philosophy of this man and kind of apply it to modern day. But you can't take everything so by the book, so by the letter. Otherwise, you become a relic, you know? And for the people that say like, oh, well, Disney should just become Walt Disney Productions again and just do animation and theme parks. You know how long that would last? About 3 days. If Disney were to become Walt Disney Productions again, that small of a company, a bigger company like an Amazon or some other big conglomerate would just snatch them up anyway, and they would just be a conglomerate of some bigger company anyway. So this romanticized version of the past of like, we'll just go back to animation and theme parks is nonsense. They can't remain independent that way. What do you think, Matthew? If they were to go back, a lot of these purists, I hear them all the time.
It's not really feasible.
It's not feasible, right? It's not feasible. You go back to Walt Disney Productions era, 1970s Disney, animation and theme parks. These tech companies will snatch you up. You're a much easier target now. Look, I know there's rumors about Apple buying Disney and what have you, but look, because Disney is so big right now, so diversified, they have so much, they're worth so much. There's only a handful of companies that can afford to buy Disney. But you dwindle Disney down into animation and theme parks only, and there's a lot of suitors that can come in and swoop in and buy Disney. And maybe these purists want that. Maybe they think the grass is greener on their side. Good luck. Good luck with Amazon running the mouse house, and see how it's going to be. You people that want the woke to get out of Disney, let's have Apple buy Disney, because I'm sure Tim Cook will get the woke out real quick. Yeah, I'm sure. You know, sarcasm is, you know, in full effect there. But I don't know, Matthew. What do you, I mean, in terms of the purist thing? I mean, where do you see it the most? You see it with the movies. You see it with the theme parks. Where are you kind of
Honestly, a bit of both. Some people are complaining about how woke elements being imported too much. Others are complaining about the over-reliance on IP in the theme parks, which is a justified complaint, I will admit. But people forget that was already started to happen near the end of the Eisner era.
Yeah, no, exactly. The IP thing was happening at the end of the Eisner era, and we live in a new day right now. Like, IP is king right now. And look, everyone loves to give Universal all this credit, right? And rightfully so. Look, Wizarding World was a game changer, I think, for the theme park industry. But Wizarding World has sort of spearheaded this IP-driven kind of culture in theme parks. Maybe not even like, you know, single-handedly, but they definitely accelerated it and exacerbated it, right? So you're not going to go back to the days of these giant, you know, e-ticket attractions based on no IP. You're not going to go back to those days ever again, fandom. There's too much competition out there right now, and the IP is more of a sure thing. You know, so what do you do if you're at Disney? You're going to spend $1 billion on a new land based on a non-IP, when you can do $1 billion on a frozen land and you have a built-in audience. It just financially, it makes way more sense. And I think also as fans, we're very disconnected from the normies. You know, I think the normies want that stuff. I do. I think the normies want to take their daughter to meet Anna and Elsa. The kids want to take their son or even daughter to go meet Spider-Man and Captain Marvel. They want that stuff. Now, for us, Matthew, I completely agree. We want the non-IP stuff. We want the Mystic Manors. We want the Haunted Mansions. We want the Expedition Everests. We want all that stuff. But the normies, I don't think they're on board with that. What do you think?
I don't think they are.
Unfortunately, you know, I mean, that's kind of the state we're in. But so if you were to, Matthew, to kind of close out this segment of the conversation, like if you were to give fans advice in regards to, you know, being a purist or the kind of mindset you believe that as Disney fans, that would be kind of a better way to approach this, what would you advise fans to do?
My advice would be try and just be a little bit more idealist. Like try and appreciate like the best of the old and the best of the new. Yeah.
And I know you're a big fan of the Michael Eisner era and the Frank Wells era, and so am I. And I think we connect on that level, definitely, because I'm a huge fan of those first 10 years of Michael Eisner. And I think Michael Eisner actually I think he is actually kind of the gold standard for that, right? So I think that like you look at a movie like Little Mermaid, you look at a movie like Beauty and the Beast, you look at an attraction like Indiana Jones Adventure. These are elements within Disney that are new, they're fresh, they're innovative, but yet they have a foot in the past, right? So for example, like Indiana Jones Adventure, it's very much a next generation Pirates of the Caribbean. So it's reminiscent of something maybe Walt would have done, but it's fresh and new and innovative enough to kind of push Disney forward. Beauty and the Beast, another example. Yes, it's very reminiscent of the fairy tales of Walt's era, the Cinderellas, the Sleeping Beauties, what have you, the Snow Whites, but yet it's fresh and new enough that it kind of pushes Disney forward, right? Michael Eisner and Frank Wells did a beautiful job at balancing that. And I think that should be the goal for Disney moving forward. You have to kind of, you have to balance this stuff out. You don't want to completely ignore what Disney stands for and completely abandon the fundamentals. At the same time, though, you don't want to be so married to the fundamentals that you completely stagnate and you become kind of a stale company. You still want to grow. Walt Disney was about growing this company. He was not about just kind of keeping the status quo. So fascinating topic, Matthew. We're going to move on to our next one. Will Iger's plan work? Okay, so will Iger's plan work? So Iger came in November, almost a year now. They ousted Bob Chapek. Bob Iger came in, and he's going to fix this, right? That's what we're told.
Yeah.
Matthew, now this is your topic. I want to ask you, Iger's plan, what you've seen so far. Do you think it'll work? Not work? Where do you stand with it, brother?
It has, some of it has worked, but some of it hasn't, if that's the best way of saying it. Like, at best, it does seem like he is more intent on choosing an actual successor and setting out a proper plan this time, but his own management feels less soulful, and it feels more like just a means to an end.
I would agree with that. Actually, that's a beautiful way of stating it, Matthew. A means to an end. You're right. I think that you're right. Okay, let me back up. So the successor thing, I think they're way more serious. I think Bob Iger and his team and the board knows, okay, we can't have another Bob Chapek, right? And look, we were very fair to Bob Chapek when he was in there. Like, I don't think he was the bald man bad thing that a lot of fans made him out to be. I think that there were some decisions there that I think he made a lot of sense. But at the end of the day, though, Hollywood and just the industry at large felt like Chapek was a mistake, right? He just didn't work in the Disney mold. Okay, so I think Iger kind of feels like we can't make that same mistake. We have to pick someone that the industry is going to embrace, that fans are going to accept. So I do think you're right, Matthew. I think that they are much more serious in getting somebody that's going to work and that's going to stick the landing. Absolutely. Can they do that? I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, for the longest time, I thought it was Dana Walden. I really did. I thought it was Dana Walden. I thought it was hers to lose. I thought she's very capable, very competent woman. I thought she was the one. It doesn't seem like Bob Iger, though, feels the same way about her. He's going outside the company now and consulting with Tom Staggs and Kevin Meyer. He wouldn't do that if he felt like he had people in the halls of Disney that can do that for him. So obviously there is a little bit of doubt there with Iger and Dana Walden, and a lot of doubt there with Iger and Daddy Josh, I think. But it's interesting, I don't know. We'll see how this pans out. But you said it's an ends to a mean. Yeah, I think that a means to an end. I think that with him, he's in legacy save mode right now, dude. Like, I think, he wants to save that legacy, and he left as a king, and he's been brought down quite a few pegs since he came back. So he wants to make sure when he leaves, Disney's in a better position. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see if it'll work. I mean, look, and this kind of ties into your next topic, but his plan so far seems to be quality over quantity, right? So we're hearing a lot from Disney and Bob Iger saying, like, look, we want to minimize the amount of stuff we're kind of pumping into Disney Plus. At the same time, though, we want to make sure the stuff that we do release is that of quality. Now, do you think that's a right move? Like, that's part of Iger's plan here. Like, he doesn't want to just have just produce a ton of shit and just throw it on the platform. He wants to make sure, hey, look, you're not going to get content regularly, but when you do get content, it's of quality. Do you think that's the right move?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. Now, have you been watching, speaking of content, have you been watching Ahsoka?
I haven't had the chance to watch it, mainly because I just can't afford Disney Plus.
Yeah. No, it's gotten expensive. Ahsoka's been great. We've been doing the Story Geek show with Jay Shear lately, George and I, and we've have guests on there regularly. But Ahsoka's been really good. If they can maintain that level of quality, I think for the content, I think we're good to go. But man, like the She-Hulks and stuff like that, it's not working. You know, they gotta, especially on the Marvel side. Look, I have a lot of complaints about Kathleen Kennedy. I think Matthew, you as well. I think we're both very critical of Kennedy. But you know, I think Lucasfilm has done a better job on the Disney Plus end of things. Like, not to say it's perfect. I mean, obviously, like Book of Boba Fett and things, they've had their issues for sure. But I think it's been more quality than what we've seen with MCU. So I think they need to pull back. I think that's the right decision with what he's saying, and kind of release less and give us more quality, and we'll see where it goes. But now, you know, it says here, now your third topic, it kind of ties into what we're talking about now. So I'm going to bring it up now. Should Disney shrink further? So that's part of Iger's plan, I think, right? Like Iger wants to shrink Disney a little bit. There's been a lot of talk about him selling ABC, maybe selling part of ESPN. Is that part of Iger's plan, Matthew, that you think is going to work for them? Or is that
absolutely, because those assets don't really feel essential to Disney.
Okay. Yeah, no, I would agree with you on that. I would absolutely agree with you on that. So when we're talking like linear TV, cable TV, yeah, I think we're on the same page there. I think that, like, hey, you know what? Is ABC necessary, right? In this world of like streaming and what have you? Because remember, when Michael Eisner bought ABC, he bought it to have a platform to showcase the Disney properties, the Disney content. But you don't necessarily need that anymore. You have streaming to do all that. You have Hulu, Disney Plus. You have all these platforms to do that. Do you need network television necessarily? Now, I do understand that the ad revenue for network television is pretty significant, but that's on the decline, though. I mean, I think eventually this network television thing is going to die. Going to die out, you know. So if Iger were to announce tomorrow he's selling ABC outright, you would support that, Matthew?
Yeah, I would support that.
That's interesting. Do you think that's the movie he's going to make?
Almost certainly. I would not, however, support or selling of Lucasfilm, Marvel, or Pixar, which is what some fans seem to want.
Yeah, I'd have seen that too, and that's why would you do that? Okay, here's the thing. Why would you sell off, for example, Marvel, right? Let's just use Marvel as an example. You sell Marvel to some other company. Let's say you sell Marvel to Comcast, right?
Would they get the woke out?
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. Would they get the woke out? That's number one. Number two, now you have Marvel integrated into your theme parks. So now you're having to pay somebody else to use Marvel in your theme parks. What's the point of that? You sell Lucasfilm. Now you have to pay somebody else to use Star Wars in your parks. Why? So yeah, you make money up front, like you get the $9 billion or the $10 billion up front for the sale, but now you're paying a fee perpetually forever to somebody else. You know, it's a money loser. It's a total money loser. And Disney has always been built on this kind of like this synergy flywheel, as Chapek calls it. Right, the ability to have the content and have it and cross promote it in the theme parks. So when you take the company and you split it up like that and you sell parts off and now you're licensing shit out, that's what Universal does. Okay, and I'm sorry, and I know a lot of people are going to get mad at me because anytime I criticize Universal, apparently it's a problem. But that's a problem with Universal, is that they're always renting and they don't own anything. All their biggest properties over there at Universal are rented properties. They rent Nintendo. They rent Harry Potter. Everything that's popular in those parks are rented. They don't get a full portion of that pie. They don't get the whole pie. They got to share it with somebody else. So why would Disney want to get into that game when they have these massive IPs that they get the full percentage from? Just improve the content. All you got to do is improve the content and you're golden. There's no need to sell it. So I agree with you, Matthew. I would be extremely foolish to do that. Now, there have been fans also out there, Matthew. I want to ask you your opinion on this. A lot of fans out there have been saying, hey, you know what? Spin the parks off. Make the parks their own company. How would you feel about that if they were to spin the parks off?
Dangerous.
Oh, okay. In what way do you believe that would be dangerous?
Disney would have less leverage.
That's interesting. Yeah, I would agree with you on that. Less leverage. Also, they would be less protected in downturns. For example, if Disney spun off the theme parks into its own company, would that company, that theme park company, have survived the pandemic? Probably not.
Probably not.
The thing that kept Disney afloat during the pandy was streaming, believe it or not. And that's the beauty of the Walt Disney Company, is that it's a diversified portfolio. So when you have a pandemic or something that hits one of the divisions, the other divisions can sort of offset that loss. So when you have a whole company, just theme parks, and I get it, people are like, it's that, and again, it goes to your first point, this purist Disney mindset fans have. Oh, well, Oriental Land Company, they make great products, and they only do theme parks. But you guys got to understand something. That's a unicorn, number one. Number two, they were very hurt during the pandemic. You're seeing a lot of cuts and a lot of problems over there at Oriental Land Company. Even as much as they do great stuff, you're still seeing issues. You want to have a balanced portfolio, so to speak, so you can offset this stuff. So if you have a pandemic or you have something that hits the content side, you have other things to sort of fill in the gaps and lift this whole thing up. You just have theme parks and you get one pandemic that lasts another year or two, that company does not survive. Okay, that's not a good solution to this. It has to be part of a bigger company, a bigger umbrella. So I don't know. It's interesting, man. Now, Matthew, I want to ask you one last question before we go. I wanted to ask you, do you believe, because Iger is saying there's rumors that Iger, he's leaving in a couple of years or a few years, right? Do you believe that's going to be the case, or do you believe he will go ahead and extend again? Because it seems like the succession thing has been, at least behind the scenes, seems like it's a struggle. It seems like they're having a hard time finding someone that's worthy enough to do this. Do you think he'll extend again, or do you think 2026 is when he'll actually leave?
I think he is on his way out this time, because if he was going to extend, why would he get back in touch with Stags?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think he wants out too, man. I think he wants out. And I think it's good for the Walt Disney Company. I mean, look, I think Iger did a lot of great things for Disney over the last, almost 20 years now. But I think at the end of the day, though, you got to move on. You have to move on from things. And it's like, I think Marty, friend of the channel, he said it best. Like, sometimes you have to allow your children to start their own families, right? Like, eventually as a parent, you kind of have to step back and let them do their thing. Okay. That's kind of like with Disney. Iger needs to be like the parent and be like, okay, I took care of this thing for all these years. It's now time for me to let this thing kind of have its own life. I think it's time for Iger to walk away and let Disney kind of do his thing with somebody else and trust the new person enough to kind of walk away. I think it's time, dude. I think we need some fresh eyes in there. And we'll see. So before we go, prediction, Matthew, who do you think is going to be the next Disney CEO? Do you have a prediction?
I would probably say either Tom Staggs or Kevin Mayer.
Yeah, I hope so, brother. From your lips to God's ears, I hope so. Either one of those men or both of those men would be phenomenal in that position. So we will see. Matthew, it is always a pleasure having you on, brother. We're going to have you on again, I think, in a week, right? So
yeah, and this time we're getting George on.
And this time we're getting the DG on. We're getting my fellow Italiano on. So we're gonna have a good time there with George, the three of us. Matthew, I will share all your social media, your Twitter and your Insta down below. Everybody at home, comment on what you think of everything we talked about today in regards to pure Disney fan purists, Bob Iger's plan, linear television, theme parks, everything. Thank you so much for watching OG55. And as always, have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye-bye, everybody.